Radar Update. My name is Daniel Vallis and welcome to our channel. We've been covering a lot that is coming together right now of things that the Bible has told us about, celestial events that have caught our attention, geopolitical events, as well as the enemy activity, some of which the Bible even tells us to be on the lookout for. And we are in a proportional time right now of the night watches, coming up toward the beginning of the new year, which will symbolize the sunrise of the new day, and fits in with a lot of warnings that Christ gave about the watch times, watch periods, and also the command to watch. And then we have a strong reminder, so many things that we see coming together right now with messaging and events and celestial signs too as well. Things that he told us to be looking for, they are happening right now. So we need to be sober and we need to be vigilant and we need to make sure we are trimming our lamps and putting on the armor of light at this time. In our last video we talked about a year ago we saw significant celestial events and symmetry and lining up with the biblical calendar. But then we also saw enemy activity, that they knew what the proper calendar was several months ago, and that they knew the importance of those dates on the calendar. They knew the proper time, and they also knew the celestial events that were going on as well. And they knew the importance of them. And particularly we've been talking about the triumphal entry of, that's what they are expecting, and the line up with the celestial event with the spring equinox as well. And we talked about the enemy messaging of twilight, the dawning of a new day, which fits in with our understanding of the Shiloh sign and the other events we see at this time, a transition period, where we're in the twilight zone, so to speak, in the fourth watch, and we have expectation, but also the enemy appears to have expectation as well, and they are watching this time more so almost than we are. And we've been talking about over the past year the enemy messaging at Trafalgar Square and elsewhere with the arch, and how initially they broadcast that they wanted to do the Bell Gate, the Baal Gate from the Baal Temple there, and they were going to set it up between the quatrefoil, the gateways to the underworld, right by the timekeeper and all that, with the lions. They were going to set that up initially, and they changed it supposedly because of public outpouring, but I believe that was all false. I believe they were doing that intentional to blur the two arches together with the final concept, the triumphal arch. So when we see the triumphal arch of Palmyra, we really need to keep in mind what they originally intended to put here as well, which is the Bell Gate, the Baal Gate. This setup and the arch, they're really a blend of the two. The Palmyra, the Phoenix Arch. And they set it up, strong association with the lions there at Trafalgar Square. And again, in a key location between the quatrefoil fountains and the quatrefoil embedded in the pavement. Very symbolic placement of where they set it up the first time, and then that continued on their subsequent setups. When they set it up in New York City, they also set it up right next to a water fountain, in line with a very similar church to the one there in Trafalgar Square. And even the fountains, when we compared them to the ones in Trafalgar, were a quatrefoil design, and the one in New York City was also a quatrefoil design, almost exactly the same. Both the same fountains, same and similar motifs of the quatrefoil, same churches, and other motifs of the lion too as well. They are having very deliberate placement. And in the fountain in New York City, they also have the Neptune trident on the four main candelabras there, and also a variation in the middle of it, but definitely a distinct trident on the corners. And you also remember when they set the arch up here at the fountain, they also had a parallel event going on at the New York Public Library several blocks away, which was also flanked by lions, triple arches as well, and more lion motifs. So they were tying the two together, and they had these events at the same time, bringing attention again to the lions with the arch setup. And then the third time they set it up just a few days ago was at Dubai, which is known for the iconic tower there. Set it up at the World Government Summit. And where they set it up in a corner. They set the arch up there under another arch right next to another arch. So you had triple arches again. As the gateway, the entryway, the palm entryway into the World Government Summit. right in a place that has a tower very reminiscent of the Tower of Babel concept. So all these setups have been very deliberate. A lot of messaging, very tight messaging, all going together, showing a gateway and a expected triumphal entry of their Nimrod figure, primarily coming from the underground and their timekeeper. And so that was a number of days ago, but not too long ago, and we saw the Oroville Dam evacuation on that day, the water almost about to break, and then the Grammy Awards with Beyonce signaling the Virgo position and their understanding of the celestial events with Jupiter in her womb right now, and also in the Palm section. They know the celestial events that are going on right now. They know the trap is about to spring. The sudden destruction that the Bible warns us was coming right after they say peace and safety. And that's events that we saw just over a year ago and continued throughout the year too. So we've been watching all those events begin to come to pass and building in the messaging that they know time is very short. Things are about to spring. And it appears that it is literally going to be at a springtime, spring equinox. And they seem to be messaging toward the trees blooming and putting forth, just like the Bible has told us. The trees blooming and putting forth, and reminding us of the fig tree picture too as well, which goes with the last generation, which started in 1948 or 1947, depending on which camp you're in. But it all goes back to time is running out. And they are expecting a triumphal entry, which has caught our attention that Jupiter opposition is going to be at the same day as the triumphal entry, the 10th day of the first month this year. So a year ago, they were already knowing what was coming up in the future. They already seemed to understand that this being a transition point, the strength of the covenant, a crossing point from the Omega to the Alpha. They have been aware of all this as well. So they've been messaging over the past year of their counterfeit and that they are expecting a triumphal entry, primarily of the Baal gate, which is the same as Marduk. And we've been seeing that's what the Babylonians, that's what they viewed Jupiter as, their god Marduk, but it's the same thing as Bel or Baal. So this is also another reason we know for sure they are watching Jupiter at opposition, because it is tied to Marduk, and this is who they've been messaging for the past year. They are definitely watching the celestial signs and the celestial clock, with a different conclusion and different message, but they are watching the same similar events. And by history, we know that several pictures are the same. There's often entities listed in Babylonian mythology or Egyptian mythology or Roman mythology or Greek mythology that have counterparts that are basically the same. And so sometimes the names get confusing, but they're basically the same thing. And history tells us that Hercules and Baal, they're basically the same thing. And Hercules is the same thing as Hercules, basically. They're all the same thing, representing shepherd king, a shepherd king really of Nimrod, the original shepherd king. And this is who they're expecting. They're expecting a Nimrod type, but who is the idol shepherd, who is the opposite of the good shepherd. And the scepter and the flail have long been associated with the scepter concept as the shepherd kings. And we saw that in our Jacob in Egypt study, along with Joseph and all that. But we've been seeing a lot of messaging of Hercules. That's what they've been using, pointing toward their Nimrod figure of Hercules or Heracles, and even Theseus. They've been using him too as well, which is very similar to Hercules, but they all have the same motif as a hunter and hunting with clubs or being identified with the clubs. And the organization that's been putting up the arches, the Institute for Digital Archaeology, right now has Theseus with his club on their main page. They still have it there. And we talked about how his name means the gathering. And this is what they know is going to happen. They know the bride is going to fall back. They know she's going to be evacuated. She's going to escape all these things. She's going to escape the snare. The ready bride, the one who is awake, the one who is rising up, living as though her beloved is coming. And the Hercules, Theseus figure can also relate to Orion, who they also view as a picture of their Nimrod, their hunter figure as well. They have a distortion of all the biblical pictures. And just recently, this organization put out their newsletter where they're talking about where the next arch is going to be set up at. The IDA at the G7 Summit. On March 30th and 31st, Florence will host the annual gathering of G7 cultural ministers. This isn't the main G7 meeting. This is just the cultural ministers. This year's theme for the G7 conclave is Cultural Heritage Preservation. Fittingly, the organizers of the event have asked the IDA to install its reconstruction of Palmyra's triumphal arch in conjunction with the meeting. The arch will be installed in the Piazza della Signoria, where it will stand alongside Michelangelo's great masterpieces, David and Neptune. It will stand alongside Michelangelo's great masterpieces, David and Neptune. The arch will be on display from March 24th to April 27th, with an official unveiling at 2 p.m. on March 30th. Okay, very interesting. They're setting it up in Florence, right next to David and Neptune, from March 24th to April 27th, with an unveiling on March 30th. Okay, let's look at the timeline. We have it here. Definitely download it. There's a link in the description box. They're setting it up on the 24th of March, which is right here in the tail end of the fourth watch, right during the civil twilight period, when the sky is normally starting to turn purple quite a bit and getting ready for the sun to come up over the horizon. This is when they're setting up the arch there in Florence. And then several days later, on the 30th, that's when they're having the unveiling, which will be the expected new year right then. It'll be sighted probably on the 29th. That's the expected day. So they're unveiling their triumphal arch at the beginning, at the dawning of the new year. And this should catch our attention when we've seen this is the messaging that they've been putting out, of expecting a dawning of their Apollo figure to come onto the scene. So there's a lot of messaging that they're putting out right here just by announcing and unveiling on the first day of the new year, on the dawning of the new year. Very important. Well, where are they setting it up at? Piazza della Signoria. It's in Florence, Italy. Here's a broad view of it. And there's a lot of occult history in association with Florence. Very occult city. But this particular piazza also has the Old Palace, what's known as the Old Palace, the seat of power there. And this is where they're going to be setting up the arch, right in front of that building, the seat of power for Florence, what was long used as the seat of power for Florence. And here's just a satellite overview, but you'll notice right next door is a 3 archways again, just like the New York City Library. Here's the Neptune fountain right here, and then David is right here, and then Hercules statues right there. So they said it's going to be set up alongside with David and Neptune, so right in this area here probably is where they're going to be setting it up for a number of days. But let's pay attention to this large building with the clock tower. That is the Old Palace there, the seat of power. Neptune right there at the corner. David and Hercules again. And this area over here with the 3 arches is basically a open air museum, and a lot of very significant statues over there. And it should catch your attention that just like the New York City Library, there's 2 lions right at the entryway of the 3 archways. And there's a number of different statues here, but this is consistent with the messaging they had before. The 3 archways, the 2 guardian lions leading up to it, and multiple lion motifs throughout too, just like in Florence, which is very popular there. In this covered museum area, they have another statue of Hercules with his famous identifier club beating a centaur. So just outside, within a few yards of the doorway where they're setting up this arch, there's already 2 major statues about Hercules here. Very significant. And they're going to be setting it up at the front. These are giant statues. You can't miss them here. Hercules here off to one side, David off to the other. But Florence is often associated with the lion. That's its emblem for the city for a long time. So not only are they setting it up in an area with a lot of Hercules symbolism, but a city known for lions. Very tight messaging with all these placements where they've been setting it up at. And of course the Neptune fountain at the corner, it's not a quatrefoil, but it is an octagon. Very suspicious, and it's Neptune, and he had a trident, but it was broken off by vandals a while ago. But the building itself is laden with a lot of murals and a lot of references to the occult and mythology. But inside the main hall, there are 6 additional statues of Hercules. So outside there's 2 statues, and inside there's 6 more. This place is practically a fan club for Hercules. They're the labors of Hercules in the Hall of the 500, here at the Old Palace. And again, emphasizing their Nimrod figure, their Hercules figure. And there's multiple rooms inside with so many paintings here. I can't really describe them all, but a lot of direct paintings of Jupiter here as well. And more paintings of Jupiter when he was a child, supposedly. A lot of mythology and occult embodied just in this one location. You can go online and read all about this particular place here. So many rooms talking about different Greek gods with different frescoes and paintings in them. And then they got statues of the same scattered throughout all the buildings. This is a very occult-laden place. A lot of deliberate messaging here. They have the clock tower, which is a medieval clock, so it only has one hand. It points to the hours, and then you figure out where the minutes are based on that too. So not only are they setting it up at a location with a lot of Hercules references and lion references, but also at a place known for a very gigantic clock, a clock tower. And at the very top is a lion. Again, it's a medallion emblem of Florence, long known for that. So they're setting up this arch in a city that embodies the lion, at a site that embodies Hercules, the Nimrod figure. So much coming together. And again, when we look at where they've set it up before and the tight messaging, all this is not accidental. Very deliberate. Symbolizing time, the timekeeper, a triumphal entry, their Nimrod figure, the Hercules figure. Again, coming through gateways, triumphal entries, gateways to the underworld, and the fountain particularly reminded me of the CERN and the Alice messaging that we've seen go alongside the other arch setups. Interesting to see how all these go together. This is very deliberate and goes with all the other Alice messaging that they've done through all the other venues that we've looked at. And all this is happening right at the end of the fourth watch is when they're setting it up at. And it's going to be there for almost a week. And then they have the unveiling. So that should catch your attention. That they're waiting till the new year to have that unveiling. And like we talked about before, it's also during the cherry blossom time that their attention has been drawn toward, during the twilight time. So this whole zone is still a twilight zone in a sense, really. There's a lot coming together, two different sides looking at the same time, watching the same time. And there's other events going on too. During that time, the Pope will meet with all EU leaders ahead of the Roman summit. What Rome summit is that? Well, he's meeting them on March 24th, the same day the arch is being set up, ahead of the bloc special summit in Rome, when on March 25th, the summit will mark the 60th anniversary of the EU bloc's founding treaty. And the pontiff will meet the leaders in the afternoon of the 24th. So all the EU leaders of the bloc are going to be coming back to Rome to celebrate the 60th anniversary of the EU bloc's founding treaty, which is the Treaty of Rome, on the 25th, the day after the arch is set up and the day after they all meet with the Pope. Very interesting that they're having a meeting and that they're all coming together at the same time. Where are they meeting? The EU leaders will gather on the Capitoline Hill in Rome to remember the day when 6 countries embarked on a project of European unity. The Treaty of Rome, signed by France, Germany, Italy, Belgium, the Netherlands, Luxembourg on March 25, 1957, paved the way for the modern EU of 28 countries and 510 million people. This is a very important event because this is political Rome coming back together again. And it should catch our attention that this is the 60th anniversary of this. When they signed the Treaty of Rome at this place, which also had tons of frescoes and paintings and statues all over it, too, very symbolic place. But this was one of the major steps in the political reunification of the Romish system, working together to get the world and the foundation ready for the Antichrist who would come onto the scene. Even Revelation tells us that the kings of the earth are going to hand over power, and they are preparing to hand over power. They have one mind, the Bible tells us. They are working on a goal toward that end already, right now. Jesus told his disciples even back then that the mystery of iniquity was already at work. There's a lot that you and I don't understand about it, but we can see different manifestations of it and how it works and its influence in geopolitics and different events around the world. But there's a lot to it that's still mystery, that kept in the occult higher circles of it. But they are preparing the way for the Antichrist who would come even thousands of years later. This is what they've been working for, preserving their myths and their secret occult teachings and all that for thousands of years. They've been at work at this. This is not nothing recent or new. And when you look on the EU wiki page, they have a timeline of the EU's evolution, and they're coming together to celebrate the 60th anniversary of the Rome Treaty, the Treaty of Rome, at this time. But it should catch your attention that some of the initial events that got it going, the treaty that really got the ball rolling, was in 1948, which was the same year that the fig tree started blooming when Israel was replanted. The enemy is at work too, and they've been watching the time, and they are looking for other blossomings of their work as well. The mystery of iniquity has been at work for a long time, now celebrating 60-year anniversary. At the same time, the day after, the arch is set up in Florence, Italy. They're going to be in Rome, Italy, at Capitoline Hill, which is a very interesting site because the room where they signed the Treaty of Rome, was built on top of the temple of Jupiter. Babylon celebrated Jupiter and Marduk at the beginning of the new year, which is right here, and they signed the Treaty of Rome right in a room built on the site of the temple of Jupiter. And there's also a site dedicated to Saturn as well. And even back in the Roman times, this particular location was associated, became an emblem of eternity, just because they thought it was an eternal site. So, again, all the concepts of time that we've been seeing with the Arch and Alice, also associated with the mystery of iniquity, how they think that they're working on an eternal work. There's a lot coming together in just these few days, and really the weeks where we are right now, this twilight zone. They are building a momentum, and they have great expectation for the work that they've been working on for a long time. Capitoline Hill, there's a unique design in the pavement right there. You can see. The travertine design set into the paving is perfectly level. Around its perimeter, low steps arise and die away into the paving as the slope requires. Its center springs slightly so that one senses that he or she is standing on the exposed segments of a gigantic egg, all but buried at the center of the city, at the center of the world, as Michelangelo's historian Charles de Tolnay pointed out. An interlaced 12-pointed star makes a subtle reference to the constellations revolving around this space, Latin for head of the world. So, think about this for a moment. They signed the Treaty of Rome here, at this place right on top of a temple to Jupiter, a site associated with eternity. They got a circle with 12-pointed stars, subtly hinting at the constellations and the ecliptic, and also referencing an egg shape, a birth. They are getting ready for a birth. Very symbolic location here. This is where they signed the Treaty of Rome, which further got the ball rolling with their EU reunification. They are expecting a rebirth. They are expecting a birthing, a water breaking to bring forth something even more significant that they've been working on for a long time, the mystery of iniquity, getting the world ready for another birthing. The water's about to break, and it's going to usher in their phoenix figure, their Nimrod type. A lot of symbolism with the meetings that are happening right at the same time that they're putting up messaging about their triumphal arch, their bell gate. They are expecting a triumphal entry. They know that as soon as the Son of Man is revealed and he gathers his ready bride, the son of perdition will be coming onto the scene with his lying wonders. And they hope to usher in their new world order, and it's also going to usher in a time of perplexity too. There's a lot coming together here that the Bible tells us to be on the lookout for, to be watching, and when we see certain events come to pass, it means things are in action, and he tells us that it's all going to happen within the generation that sees those first events. This is why we need to be watching prophetic events, because there is a time limit. The generation that saw all these events, the enemy also started some major portions of their work at the exact same time. There's two parallel works. We see that time is running out. We see that the clash is coming. We see that sudden destruction is coming. We see celestial events telling us that time is running out. We see the things that our Lord and our Savior and our Redeemer, our Beloved, has told us to watch for. What are we doing? Is that changing how we live? He tells us to watch therefore and pray always, that you may be accounted worthy to escape all these things that shall come to pass, and stand before the Son of Man. We see that the things have begun. We see we're at the time and the season where we know that our redemption is nigh at hand. We know we're at a time of degenerations where all this is expected to come together. And when we see all this coming together, we need to take heed to ourselves, examine ourselves. Are we rising up? Are we trimming our lamp? Are we casting off the works of darkness? Are we putting on the armor of light? Are we living as though all this is coming together right now? Whether we do anything or not, it's coming together. It's going to clash very soon. The snare is going to spring. Which side of it will we be found on? Will we be found the wise that escape because they are watching and we are praying always and we're making sure that our fellowship and walk with God is where it should be? Or will we be found foolish, ignoring what is coming together, ignoring the snare that we've been warned about, ignoring the instructions, the call to fellowship, the call to draw nigh to God? What are we doing? Are we watching? Definitely download our resources, the Time of Perplexity, the SHILOH booklet, the Revelation 12 booklet, but especially the Be Ye Ready guide. Our Lord is returning, and He has left instructions for His servants of how He wants to find us with our loins girded and our lamps burning. Is this what we are applying ourselves to right now? I hope so. We have heard the trumpet call at midnight. Behold, the bridegroom cometh, go ye out to meet him. So let us rise up, let us trim our lamps, and let us shine bright for Him, serving Jesus Christ, first and highest above all else. Maranatha.